Did you ever notice that the original art for this mountain, designed by Richard Wright, was meant to be a time-lapse, but in reverse? The art designed for the original Ravnica depicts the city very clearly on fire, while this art made 13 years later, in Guilds of Ravnica, shows the same city, only the fire had just started burning in the building. It's a nice touch revisiting all the same places in the city but from a different moment in time, and Richard Wright does the same thing for all 5 basic lands. Isn't that cool? Merch, like, comment, subscribe. Hello, we are back with episode 9 of Back to Basics, a show where I take EDH commanders and try to find the perfect basic lands to fit them. I love seeing someone sit down with some beautiful basic lands, but something I love even more is seeing how well those lands match their commanders. One quick note before we begin. I like to give the artists credit for their artworks, but I may not pronounce their names perfectly. I'll try my best, but please forgive me and correct me if that ever happens. First up, we've got Kanji Sky Warden, who frankly has got some awesome color styling. The first thing I was drawn to is that there's no visible ground in this scene, and the background that Kanji and his Squadron Hawks are sitting on is just pale gold sky. So I wanted to emphasize those clouds and lack of ground visibility by looking at this plains from Jumpstart, illustrated by Young Hao Han, that has those gold clouds as well as the blue notes that reflect his color identity. And this island from Jumpstart, illustrated by Piotr Dura, that shows a rocky structure sitting above the clouds. The brightness and scenery also matches elegantly as well. If you wanted a more budget option, however, then focusing on the clouds is a good place to start, and the plain of Kaladesh is known for its wonderful clouded sky patterns. So I went with this plains from Kaladesh, illustrated by John Avon, and this island, illustrated by Johannes Voss, that I think is really bright, beautiful, and scenic. Second on the list, we've got Karametra, God of Harvests. The thing that I noticed is about half of the composition is just the scenery, and the other half being her form itself, which is true to form. Most of the gods in Theros are shot from far away in a distant flat field. Karametra is no different, although she specifically has more yellow hues alongside the cyan of the sky than most other Theros commanders. So for the first pairing, I wanted to emphasize that flatness of her scenes, and I started with this plains from the Dual Deck Speed vs. Cunning, illustrated by Jonas DeRoe, that looks similar to her artwork, just without her being in the background. Finding a forest that matches this composition was a little bit tougher, however, so I went with this forest from Rivals of Ixalan, illustrated by Dimitar Marinsky, that also emphasized the yellow and green tones blending together. For a second pairing, I decided to use some more dynamic imagery that also matches the color palette, starting with this plains from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, illustrated by Piotr Dura, and this forest from Commander 2019, illustrated by Elena Danner. Both of these pairings work well in my opinion, and offer a good view of Karametra, although there were a lot of different pairings that could have worked for her just as well. Third on the list, we've got Iros, God of Victory, just going on the line of Theros gods in Commander. Along the same vein of what I said about Karametra earlier, Iros is sitting alone in a flat field, but this scene places him behind levels of atmospheric effects, making him seem painted on the sky, so I wanted to emphasize those atmospheric effects as best as I could, with this plains from Invasion, designed by DJ Cleland Hura, and this mountain, illustrated by Edward P. Baer Jr., from the Pacific Asian Land Program. I absolutely love these lands, and I feel like their smoky sunset haze fits the serene depiction of Iros very well. However, if you wanted a more budget option, then you could try this plains from M12 designed by Charles Urbach, and this mountain from M10 designed by Karl Kopinski, which costs negligible amounts in comparison to the previous mountain, and honestly looks just as good as well. Fourth on the list, we've got a tough one, because it's not just one commander. It's a partner pairing, suggested by a subscriber to the channel. Tormod the Desecrator and Prava of the Steel Legion. Now, the tough thing about partner pairings is that the two partners in question are never truly meant to be visually matching, so the basic land choices will need to be the glue that links the two ideas together. So the things that I was able to find in common between these two were the darker hued blues and violets floating from the skull that Tormod is holding, and in the sky behind Prava. So take a look at this plains from Odyssey, illustrated by Alan Polak, and this swamp illustrated by Mark Plug from the European Land Program. Each one of these matches the color schemes of the other, while also focusing on that blue that is the tying color between the two images. However, for a more budget option, I found two more land pairings that might be a little bit more accessible. So take a look at this swamp from Origins, illustrated by Larry Elmore, that matches the blue tones exhibited in Tormod, while also looking at this plains from Shadows over Innistrad, illustrated by Andreas Rocha, that focuses on the dark colors and the blue as well. I personally really like the plains because it feels like it's Orzhov colored already, and it is a nice blend of contrast between dark and light. The third option for this partner pairing I found to be because of the light coming from Tormod's hands, and the skull that he's manipulating. So I found myself drawn to the panoramic lands from War for the Spark that have visual depictions of Planeswalker sparks flying across the frame. So take a look at this plains and this swamp illustrated by Richard Wright that also fit the vibe, and they fit the color palette decently as well. And finally, we have Raff Kapashan, Ship's Mage, a commander that I myself have personally built. The thing I found most compelling about Raff is his story elements, being a member of the Weatherlight and part of its crew. So I felt it was only natural to start there by using the Weatherlight lands, namely this plains from Dominaria, and this island from Dominaria as well, both illustrated by Titus Lunter. Each one of these artworks has a tiny image of the Weatherlight flying from scene to scene, which makes it a great pick for decks like Captain Sisay, but here it works perfectly from a lore perspective as well. But from a color matching perspective, we will need to look closer at the gold and yellow tones in the artwork, because there was no real matching elements in basic lands that could fit the beautiful patterns that he's emitting from his hands. So take a look at this plains from Magic Origins, illustrated by Michael Cormack, and this island from Theros, illustrated by Rob Alexander. Both of these artworks exhibit the low contrast, early morning color scheme that Raff emits in his artwork. But there you have it, 5 more commanders sorted for which basic lands I think match them best. But I want to see what you think. Tell me which commanders you'd like me to try to pick up basic lands for. Comment below and let me know, and have a great day.